Today's episode is sponsored by one of my favorite rap labels, Front Row Regale. Started by my good friend Rock City Mark, legendary rapper Ito, and Jay Rios, they are the go-to for real hip-hop. Make sure to check out the whole team, including DJ Doo-Wop, Jay Black, Nice to Future, Boo Boo the Prince, Reno RX, and Uwop Diggs. Follow Front Row Regale on all platforms and check out the New York by Ito and DJ Doo-Wop out now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's an honor, for real.
Yeah, it's the honor is mutual. I
lot of
appreciate
people,
your work.
Thank you. A lot of people, when you tagged me on the Kenny Siegel and Billy Woods review, were saying that they were coming from your page, and I was like, the crossover of worlds is wild right now. After that, I was like, we definitely need to sit down and talk.
Yeah, well, I mean, and again, it's hard because I interview people, so I want to be careful not to interview you. But to give you some flowers here, there aren't very many people interviewing the people who you're interviewing. So you're a very valuable resource, like for the future. I mean, for right now, it's great, but especially for the future, when people look back at this moment, it's like, well, is anybody like really talking to these guys? And if all we're relying on is sort of like random blogs or whatever. So yeah, so that was very useful because you also got Kenny Siegel to kind of shit on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. So I thought that might spice up my review to be like, oh, let's throw this out there, and that'll get people over to you. I figured if I said that's what he said.
Yeah. So. How did you feel about that album?
Oh, I think it's great. Yeah, I mean, I understand all of the criticisms, but I also, my whole thing is I'm all about artists. Like that's what interests me the most. That's why I don't do any negative reviews because it's like, who the hell am I to say that an artist did a bad thing? Like it's hard enough being an artist without people making money off of saying you suck. So yeah, I'm really all about the artist, and it very clearly is what he wanted to do. And even though, like I think everybody's I think everybody wants Damn. And then everybody got To Pimp a Butterfly, but they couldn't accept that they wanted a Damn. So they just said, well, this isn't To Pimp a Butterfly. And I think it's pretty close. So
I like that you don't talk negatively about music. I appreciate that because a big thing is like when I wasn't on my path, when I wasn't like pushing myself forward, I feel like I could talk badly about other people because I didn't understand the struggle it took to actually follow your art. But then the second you like grow up and you're like, oh, if I want to do this, I have to take myself seriously. You don't want to talk bad about anyone else because it's the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated.
Yeah. And it's hard because, so whenever as an example, I didn't know who Fantano was until like a year after I did my channel. But once I learned who he was, I enjoy his content just fine. I enjoy his work. But I definitely click on the not goods, even if I don't know the artist. And I don't click on the yellow flannel when I don't know the artist. So it's like, I'm just as guilty as anybody of like, it's a lot easier to sell negativity. And it's really tempting, especially when I have like 5 low performing videos in a row to just be like, oh my God, you guys, I hate Coldplay or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that is the thing is you have to make the content you want. Like I'll still have episodes that get 50, 60 views, but it's of someone that I really wanted to talk to. And it would be easier to get clickbaity titles. Like that's why how you reached out and how you said you appreciated my podcast really did mean a lot because I want to be friends with these guys. I'm a comedian. I understand the artist mindset, and these are the people I connect with. So I don't want to do it for clickbaity titles or to get someone in trouble or to say, hey, how's this beef with blah, blah, blah? Because at the end of the day, the podcast is one thing, but these are my friends. Like I was just out with West Side Gun and Lynn and SDNAC a couple days ago. And if I used my friendship with him to get clickbaity titles, then they'd be like, get the fuck away from us. You're not going to be in the studio with us,
Right. Yeah. And I can imagine that must be really tempting too, especially because you have such access that I imagine one of your best skills is not saying way more things than you've ever said.
Oh,
So
that is yeah, or editing things out of the podcast that I knew people would get in trouble for. Like,
yeah,
like I won't give names, but the only time I really edited something out of the podcast was someone like admitting to murder on the
wow,
podcast. And I'm like, all right, this might get a lot of views, but I'm not going to indict someone. Like, I don't want to
right,
snitch. I don't want my podcast played in a courtroom. You
right, yeah.
know?
You're not who's that guy, Vlad? Yeah,
Exactly. Something I really appreciate about you, because I want to talk to you about your stuff, is
yeah,
sidebar. Have you seen the Super Mario Brothers movie yet?
yes,
You have. Okay.
yes,
So I
yes, quite a
watched
bit.
it the other day.
Like literally opening day.
It was amazing. I loved it.
Yes,
I really
yes,
enjoyed it. But at the end of the movie, he saves the universe, he gets the girl, and then he has to just go back to his 9 to 5. Like
right.
that was the big message of that movie to me. Is
Yeah,
like after he saves literally the universe, he just has to go be a plumber afterwards, you know?
yeah,
And that's something I really appreciate about yours, because you're a professor, you're a teacher, right?
yep, yep.
Like
I'm
you
a,
do
I'm
this
a,
all of love.
yeah, yeah. I mean the Raekwon line is the line I use all the time. It's just a hobby I picked up in the lobby, which actually Woods quoted. I didn't know that till last week. So that's the way that I think of it. And I really am a full-time French professor. I'm also the chair of my department. I'm going to be academic senate president. I'm like, a very much a suburban bourgeois full-time employed guy. But this is, yeah, just something. I mean, I've had a lot of hobbies in my life, but this is definitely the most rewarding. And then it became successful. I mean, that was when I started, I wasn't trying to be successful because it was like, who the hell wants to hear what I have to say? And so if you ever see my early videos, I had a different name on my channel. I was Skye Sweaty Record Reviews because I was so nervous about like how I would like, I tried to keep them under 5 minutes, which is very funny if you know my if you know my stuff now, which is
Yeah,
none of
yeah.
it's like under an hour. Yeah. So eventually I sort of leaned into it and changed the name of the channel. And then just one video took off. And then once one video took off, then YouTube was nicer to the next. And now I've hit like a comfortable plateau. I always sort of think, and you probably have experienced this too. You always sort of think like, well, this is going to be the one that catches fire and gets me up to the next plateau. And nope, not that one. And then maybe this next one. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's what keeps you going, is that like, huh? The West Side Gun interview has like sitting at like 5,000 views. I'm like, I'm
Right.
only 10 people. He's only been interviewed maybe 10, 15 times in his entire
Yeah.
life. I thought that was going to be the one, but it also proves like if that makes you stop, then it's not what you were supposed to be doing.
Right. Because in reality, you got to talk to West Side Gun and you got to ask him questions that mattered to you. And you, I mean, it's cheesy as hell, but whenever people ask me about the things that I've done, it's always just like, I think, well, what do I wish existed? And then I try to make it exist. And
Yeah.
I feel like if people did that more, I know it sounds like I'm saying follow your dreams. I think it's great if people abandon their dreams. Like I'm a big fan. Like my daughter did acting and she wasn't very good at it. One day she's like, I'm not a very good actor, am I? I'm like, no, you're really not, but you're very good with French. You're very good with English. You're very good with music. So, and then,
Yeah,
so
I like that you won't do it for albums, but you'll do it for your
yeah,
acting. You gotta do a video of that reviewing
yeah. Yeah.
reviewing her acting.
The
Uh,
Wizard of Oz. While the flying monkey was cute, she was not convincing.
where did the inkling of the idea come from? Like this hobby that ended up taking off.
So, I got divorced in 2013, and that was just a very, so I'm 45 years old now. I'm Kanye years old, or you're from Massachusetts as well. I'm Tom Brady years old as well.
Yeah.
So I kind of got divorced, and like I went through like a year where I got really into just 3 albums and I love them and I felt really connected to music. One of the things I'm obsessed with is the mid-20s music death. So when you turn like 24, 25 years old, you basically just determine that it's all over and good music is done and everything is good as before. And maybe I'll listen to something that sounds like something I used to listen to, but nothing new. So I sort of had that idea in my head, like floating around, like, did this happen to me? Can it really be that rap is just dead? Is it really possible that it never will get better than Wu-Tang Forever and that was it? And so when I turned like 40, right around 2017, I started to realize, okay, so maybe I should just listen to more music. So I had Tidal because of Life of Pablo. Like I literally only started listening to music. I have vinyl, I have CDs, I have thousands of CDs. I'm CDs years old. But I started listening to Tidal, and so I'd start listening to new music, and then I would like post my thoughts on my Facebook, and like my friends just didn't care at all. Like I'd write these like really interesting. I remember when that Kesha album came out, where you see her butt on the cover, and I remember just writing this really interesting treatise on Kesha, and like one person was just like TikTok, haha, and that was it. So like that was the sort of origin. And then on top of that, I was dating someone at the time whose daughter was extremely into YouTube. And a way that I connected with her was by letting her explain how YouTube worked. Because if you're not, if you're over 40, it's pretty tough to get how great TikTok is and how interesting it is. So she'd show me, game theory and JonTron and all these sort of very niche but also big internet things. And then I would
I
watch
knew
her.
neither of those names. I'm not
Yes, there you go. One of them's okay. The other one is kind of a fascist. So I'll let you figure out which one's which. You're going to get a lot of hate, by the way, for that comment. So you're welcome. But yeah, so like I got into like the politics of YouTube and the way that it worked. And then part of the reason why I started the channel 1 week before my 41st birthday was I was just like, so what's it like? Like, what is the actual, what happens to your brain when somebody likes what you're doing? Like, what happens to your brain when you have success? What happens to your brain when someone accuses you of dyeing your hair? Like what happens to your, and that was the other part. It's like I called it my experiment up until it succeeded, and then now it's my hobby. So
your experiment, yeah, but there was a yes, but there's a reason that you would put that much time and effort into something.
yeah, well, it was that secondary belief. So like I'm I really am like okay. So Tom Brady is a complicated character, and for the most part, he's a grifter and an evil human being. But also, because I pay a lot of attention to Boston sports because I don't live there anymore, and that's the easiest way to stay connected. Is like his obsession was with flexibility. Like that's what kept him going for so long. It's not that he lifts weights; it's that he can touch his toes. So like I got sort of obsessed with this idea of like the way to age better is to be more flexible. So instead of putting all of that into like doing yoga, because I can't touch my toes, um, but I sort of thought like, well, like mental flexibility has to be it. So that was the other thing, was that even if no one cared what I was doing, if I listened to, as an example, whatever, 100 gex, right? Like even if no one cared what I thought about 100 gex, if I listen to 100 gex and really think, what does this mean? How is this good? How is this vibrant? Or whatever. The Kodak Black album came out, and even if I don't review it, I'm going to listen to it very carefully. There are probably 3 people over the age of 22 who are going to listen to the Kodak Black album. It's like,
I love Kodak Black.
yeah, I do. I do too. But if you grew up, first rap tape is the Fat Boys, and then you
Yeah.
remember NWA, and then you hear Kodak Black, it takes real flexibility to see like, oh, this isn't different. This is the same stuff. It's the same art. It just sounds different. So yeah, that's the angle that made it sort of, that's what made me passionate about it without any success, was thinking that it will help me, not live forever literally, but sort of stay mentally young.
I like that idea of flexibility. And I think that's something that I try to toy with, but didn't know the words to put to it. It's like you see people who have been in like an older person who's been in a relationship for a really long time, and they're very overweight, and they weren't overweight when they first started dating because they were only working out to find someone. And then they
Right.
find someone and they're like, well, I found someone. There's no point in me working out anymore,
Right.
because I did the thing and it
Yep.
worked out, and now I'm good. But then that ends up ruining their life and the relationship and their health and everything when if you're doing it for yourself, like no one's gonna care how many weights you lift. But if
Right.
you lift weights for yourself, then that's going to be what matters most. And I think
Yeah.
that is the thing that keeps people going. I appreciate you putting the word flexibility to that.
Yeah, and I think too with music, it's another good example where music and youth is so connected because that's music will never get better for you or for me or for any of the artists that we interview or talk to than it was when we were between the ages of 15 and 25. It'll just never have that vitality ever. It can't. It can come close, but it'll never have that vitality. So there's also a degree to which like it's so associated with youth that it also feels like we sort of, in the same way that we might use up all of our exercise and then get fat, like we sort of use up all of our passion and interest in music and then just sort of kind of just sort of like let it go and then just, Dinosaur Jr. is going on a reunion tour, and they were a big band out of Boston when I was in
I
high
love
school.
that. I've seen them open up
Yes.
for I've seen, yeah, I know. Dinosaur Jr.
So, but it's like if I go to see Dinosaur Jr., it would be really hard for me not to be like, oh man, the 90s. I remember the 90s,
Mm,
and yeah, but I mean Dinosaur Jr. is a bad example because they are a band that is not just they actually continue to create art and be vital. So
yeah. What do you think happens at 25? Life hits you in the face, you lose your parents' insurance. Like
yeah, I think
I'm turning 26 in July, and I'm
yes.
like, I gotta stop smoking weed. I gotta start taking care of myself. I'm a podcaster. I'm not gonna get health insurance. Like
Yeah, it's I mean I think that's what it is. I think that there's a certain because I mean the reason that college is the best years of your life, although I mean grad school is more fun than college, but the reason that's so great is the amount of flexibility that you have because you're like free to meet people, but at the same time you're free to meet like people's experiences and interests and passions. So, I never would have discovered that I liked the Beach Boys if I didn't go to college because I thought they sucked because of Kokomo. And then in college, I met a group of friends who liked the Beach Boys, and there's once you get out of college or once you get out of that space where you're meeting new people, um, there's just no access. And that's part of why I love Title and why I do this show is I couldn't have done this show 20 years ago because I would have had to like go down to the record store and be like, hey kids, what you listening to? And just kind of back off.
yeah.
But it's what's far out about the internet. I keep telling all of my, because I have I have a couple of teenagers, so I hang around with a lot of other parents. And I'll just say, like, everything that kids think about, you can just find it. It's right on YouTube. Like, just spend half an hour. You will see exactly what our kids are thinking, what they're talking about. It is all on display. So I'm going on a tangent here, but what actually happens to you when you turn 25? So I think that's it. And then you have to do health insurance, and also music becomes a sad reminder of your youth. It becomes like sad, and I don't like. I mean, when when Wu-Tang started releasing albums that weren't as good, whatever, like Iron Flag, which is still an album that I like, but still, I remember just thinking like, they're getting old and I'm getting old, and you just sort of focus more, and then you sort of move more towards TV and towards a little bit more um, occupying passivity, because
Yeah.
music's also fairly active. Like you have to sort of be into it. It's sort of a lively thing. So
I'm a stand-up comedian. That's what I did even before the podcast. That's like my main thing. And something I like to compare. My dad's favorite movie was Chappelle's Block Party growing up. So I compare
okay.
comedy and rap music a lot. How it's one person, okay, there's a DJ, but it's really one person in an audience. But
Mm-hmm.
something that's very different between the two is that rappers overall, their music doesn't age as well. Like the
Right.
older they get, usually now there are definitely examples, especially now, especially with people like Griselda, especially with
Yeah.
people like Woods, that you don't have to be 20 years old to be making amazing music. But comedians don't get famous young. They get
Right.
famous old. Because like comedians, you want to be jaded. You want to hear
Mm-hmm.
someone who's jaded talk about life. But with rap, you want to hear someone who's excited about life.
Right.
talk about it, not someone who's jaded.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's true. And also you want the vitality. Like there is a kind of a parasitic nature to specifically rap music, but I'd say all popular music where you're sort of vicariously living. I mean, so someday I'll do a video about like what it was like for me being 12 years old in Belmont, and you're from Massachusetts, so you know what Belmont's like. So, in Belmont, listening to Easy E, like realistically, the reality of the disparity between race and class and everything was playing out between my ears. And I was just bopping along to the music. Nobody move, nobody get burnt. And like I had no idea that there was this whole universe of socio-political things happening behind me. But yeah, but I do think there's that vitality, and that's one thing that I liked because I've been probably right after this, I'm going to finally do my Stay review. And as I said in the email, I watched your interview, and that was one thing where he was embarrassed about the fact that he's old, and I think it's one of my theories about why hip hop is the greatest art form in human history. Is that you can tell how strong something is by its mainstream and then the alternative streams, how strong the alternative streams are. So like we have this other alternative stream that everyone is afraid to like call older rap, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's obviously there because Griselda is all basically my age, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
I've said this on the podcast before, but Conway's God Don't Make Mistakes album listening party was also his 40th birthday party.
right.
Like, that's
Yeah,
his first major label debut on his 40th birthday.
right.
Like,
And I think I think there's a bunch of reasons why that's happening. I think it's because, I mean, definitely it's one of the craziest things how ruthless rap used to be. I mean, LL Cool J was able to make it past a decade, and that was it. It was like when I was listening to Jay-Z, like I would listen to Cool Modi because I was trying to be a cool hipster hip hop guy, but nobody would listen to Cool Modi, or no one listened to even Run DMC. I mean, I saw Run DMC perform at the college where I went, and they performed in front of people just walking by the college mall. Like no one was even stopping to watch them perform.
yeah.
And that's the level to which just old school was just dead. And so we have a couple things. We have rappers who get to stay relevant while they're older, and then rappers who get to become relevant while they're already old. And it's great. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's a lot of middle-aged white guys who are willing to spend $40 on a piece of vinyl. Like I
Mhm.
think that's the secret economy that's allowing this thing to keep going is that there's guys like me who are like, well, I guess I can afford the splattered vinyl. I'll wait up and order it. But
Yes, I think that is true. And I think it definitely is the like 40-year-old white guys playing vinyl. But I also think it's the concert versus the vinyl. Now,
right.
younger music, they're not going to be buying vinyls. They don't give a fuck. They're going to go to the concert. They're going to spend their money on the concert. But people who are older and more established and have maybe a family or a job or even just don't want to go to a fucking concert, they still
Right.
want to support their favorite artist and spend their money on them because that's how we support artists, is spending our money on them. And
Yeah.
so that makes it happen more because it's like there's a way to get concert money without going to concerts, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I want to go back to the stand-up comedian thing because I didn't mention so I've only done a couple interviews on my channel because I just get way too up in my head. I cannot emotionally handle interviewing people. It is so tough. So
It really did.
I interviewed Woods, and I didn't bring up a point I made on the review, but the last album, Maps, I think can also be read as a stand-up comedy act about traveling because it's one of the hackiest things that stand-up comedians talk about what they know, and at a certain point in their career, all they know is airports and hotels. So then all of their pieces become so. Like if you actually look at Maps, a lot of it's about like layovers and looking at himself, and there's like even a couple of punchlines. So anyways, I sort of imagine that's another way of listening to that very serious and deep, dark, wonderful album is imagining it as him being on stage like, so I was on an easy jet in Amsterdam. Ooh, oh no, it gets worse.
I agree. It was because Hiding Places was so dark
Yeah.
and so gritty and so real that I was surprised at how light Maps was.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was it wasn't light at all. but it
Right.
was comparatively. And
Yeah.
it is like, I do see exactly what you mean in that.
Yeah.
How was interviewing them? I know this is probably an inside baseball question.
No, no. So it was,
I'm also going to fix this door that keeps
yeah,
shut.
yeah, yeah, no worries. So okay, so here's the deal. So I recorded the whole thing and I uploaded the entire thing unedited only for my Patreons. And I had a total of 80 Patreons. I now have 150. So 60 people were interested enough to see me talking to Woods and Kenny Siegel for 2.5 hours that they did that. So the reaction has been great because I'm editing it down. So I think it went great. The problem was we recorded at night and Woods is a family man and I'm a family man. So we're both a little groggy, and Kenny Siegel's out in LA. And I mean, you interviewed him, he's great interview, super quick with answers. Just, sorry, I turned off my so yeah, super quick with answers and all that. But the whole time I was recording, I was like, is this like just two like dads after their kids go to bed, kind of like mumbling through an interview? But on listen back, like it's filled with gems, and it was great. And while I'm editing it down, I'm like, okay, well, I'll take out my bad joke here and something that went nowhere there. But it ended up being great, like lots of really cool stories. It's a little nerve wracking because Woods really likes his privacy, which I respect. So it was just his face. So it was, just his name, and
Mhm.
then Kenny, out of respect to match him, also did it just a name. So it's sort of like a video host and a podcast mixed together. But
Wait, so he didn't even have his face on for you to see?
No.
That's an interesting. I thought when I saw that, I was like, oh, you just probably just edited the video out of that. But no, you
Right.
didn't even see it, which is a very different interview. What
Yeah.
with not being able to see someone's reactions, their facial reactions to your questions.
Yeah, it turns out that's very necessary to think if an interview is going well. So, so I think it went. I mean, they gave me a ton of time and they told me lots of great stuff and they answered all my questions and they never seemed annoyed. So yeah, I think it went well. But I'm, one of the things I do for my channel, part of the reason why I do so many videos is that I don't edit. That's like one of my things. But I sometimes I have to. So I have to edit this because it can't be 2.5 hours and still be good. So I'm very reluctantly going into a
Why
iMovie
do
and
you think
editing it
that?
together. Why do I think I need to edit it?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like very long pauses, where I'd ask a question and Woods would be sort of like, I think it's that now everything he says is interesting, but the ums mixed with the 2.5 hours isn't great. And then also I want to have visuals, so I'm going to put in like images, that like so in hiding places they make reference. My favorite Woods verse is him talking about how either you have the two quarters or you don't, and he's talking about pretending to play an arcade machine when he's too poor to put in the money. He tells me where that place is. Like he tells me the name of the movie theater. So I'm like, sweet, I'm going to put up a picture of the movie theater. So once I decide I'm going to do that, then I have to edit. So I might as well trim it down. And
Yeah.
then also I'll leave the other version up for people who, are passionate enough to hear the whole thing. Cause I mean, I'm not joking. Like talking to Woods about music is awesome. Talking to Woods about food is amazing. I mean, he went off on his recipe for pork belly, and it's so good. Like I love it, and I'm going to say in the review, like you're stupid if you don't watch it, but I'm going to cut it out because I don't think that needs to be sort of part of the official record of this interview. But that'll be for people who want to, yeah.
That's so funny. I hear what you're saying, but I think I go to the other way. Maybe I just hate listening to myself, so I don't want to edit anything. I'll
Right.
just put. I've had so many moments where I look too stupid or I'm too stoned and I go off on a tangent. I lose my place, but it's all part of the draw to it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I mean,
I,
yeah.
I do understand why you would cut out certain things, especially with an audio only.
I started off with a joke that I thought would hit, and it didn't hit at all. So you basically, I don't want people to see how hard I thought it was a great joke that would be understood, but it got nothing. And I was like, basically, just dig out, dig out, dig.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
I started an interview by asking the rapper, I go, it's crazy. In the last 6 videos, your hairline keeps getting better. Are you taking pills or anything?
Oh, gee.
And that was like I had to dig myself out for like 40 minutes. Never
but
ask a
it, but
rapper
on you, it's
if they're
good. But
taking hair, if they're taking hymns. You
oh my god,
know?
wow, that's something.
What were the to go back, what were the 3 albums you listened to when you were going through your divorce?
So, Random Access Memories by Daft Punk. That was definitely the most important one. I'm gonna be doing a video over the summer on each of these because they're all actually tied around Daft Punk. So as a French professor, French culture does not make its way into America that often. So the fact that Daft Punk is French is very cool. And then also Phoenix, Bankrupt. They're another band that split off from the original Daft Punk, so that's cool. And then Yeezus by Kanye, that was definitely the most important. I mean, I saw the Yeezus tour twice. Once it was amazing. The second time was absolutely garbage. Um, like one time it was the best concert I've ever seen. The second I wanted to leave early. So yeah, I'd say those are the three. And I mean, Yeezus did a lot for me, and that happens to be tied in because Daft Punk co-produces a lot of the songs. And I find myself accidentally becoming like a chronicler of the Yeezus tree because everybody who did anything on that album kept making music that's interesting and meaningful. So yeah, that's funny because basically I paid no attention to new music except for random things here or there. And then 2013, I just got all into this. And then that also helped me because getting sort of way into Kanye in 2013 and then falling to 2016, that forced me to get into modern rap music because he doesn't just, he did the Lupe feature in 2005, but he's not going to do a Lupe feature in 2020. He's going to get whatever, Lil Burke or Lil Durk or,
Yeah.
Lil Bun or Bun Little, right? So, yeah. So
It's I
that helped me to
do
understand better.
yeah. Just real quick, Phoenix was part of Daft Punk.
Yeah, so I actually you want to talk about videos that you think are going to do well. I did this crazy video where I broke down the history. So Daft Punk started off as a high school band in a very like Tony part of Paris, with both guys in Daft Punk and one of the future guitarists for Phoenix. And they were a band called Darwin, which was in reference to a Beach Boys song. So they recorded like a 7 inch, which I finally found one, and it didn't do very well. They were trying to be like a cross between like Nirvana and Beach Boys, and it was okay. And then the New Music Express in England, the guy reviewed it and he called it daft punky thrash. That's what he referred to the music. So they broke up after that. The one guy went off to join Phoenix, and then the other two guys said, "Okay, we'll make electronic music." So I made a video that has never done well where I got the NME, I got the original record, I go into the whole history. I talk about the guy who actually who wrote the article and like his history of music criticism. I did a whole explanation of how they relate to that specific Beach Boys song that they took the title from. I did most I've ever worked on any video, and just nothing. Just
I had no idea about that.
yeah,
Wild.
yeah.
And that's so funny about Yeezus. That's a very polarizing album. Going back, I enjoy it, but I think it's probably one of my least favorite Kanye albums.
Hmm.
Life of
Yeah,
Pablo. I grew up with Kanye because I'm 25, so that was like a
right.
very influential. But Life of Pablo is one of my favorite Kanye albums. Like that is
Yeah,
one of my favorites. But
yeah.
Yeezus was very noisy. And I don't know
Yes.
if I like noise, like Death Grips or those. It's like it's very tough for me to get into noise.
Yeah, I mean, to me that's my favorite Kanye album, Yeezus, and it's not even particularly close. I love that album so much, and partly because it's noisy, because it helped me to sort of connect with, because I listened to a lot of punk when I was younger, and just sort of like that weird mixture. And then also just it's a thing that I did, which I think is hilarious. I think this should have gone viral. It never did. But when we were listening, this is going to be a cavalcade of currently canceled people. When we were listening to Yeezus, so I listened to all the music I listened to with my kids. Just doesn't matter. Never heard Wheels on the Bus even once. I don't care. Better bad words than bad music. But still, I tried to get the edited versions of rap albums to make it easier for them. But they never released an edited version of Yeezus. So they were really into Harry Potter at the time. So what I did was I went into GarageBand. I ripped the songs from Yeezus onto GarageBand and I replaced all of the swears with Harry Potter movie quotes. And each one is selected for the song. So I am a god turns into I am Aragog. And so I just use all these quotes about Aragog, and like there's New Slaves is all about Dobby the house elf because he's kind of a slave. And anyways, they're all on YouTube as edits I made way before the channel. So that's the main way that I've listened to the album is with my own Harry Potter edited versions.
So you're this is the passionate is a better word, but I would
Yeah.
say obsessed because that's how I feel too. Is
Yeah.
you do it because you love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds like the amount of time that must have taken sounds insanity, and it should go viral.
Yeah,
Crazy that it
but
did.
it was so worth it because I got to sit there and listen to New Slaves with my kids, which is like that's great music. That's super well made. It's interesting. It's discordant. It's potent. So it doesn't matter if it's So there's leaders and there's followers, but I'd rather be a Dobby than than a swallower. Like that's that. I don't know that it was really worth it and obviously it's very difficult to Kanye is a difficult issue right now. Although I did listen to Kids See Ghosts literally this morning. But still, that's been one of the main connectors between me and my kids has been just like love of music and listening to music with them. So
Did they enjoy music to the level that you do?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, my son is so I played drums in high school and I was in a band and it was going to be my goal to be a rock star. But it was before the internet even, so it was really hard to, if you want to get a gig, you had to like bring your demo and leave it outside of the back of a club and like hope they picked it up and hope they called you. And we were just too shy, so nothing went anywhere. So my son like plays drums and he's like so much better than I am. It's awesome. So he's like really into making like music and playing music. And he likes basically everything that I like. Um, and like I've never pushed it. Like I've never said like, because the thing I hate the most is when I see what I call boom Xers, which are Generation X boomers, like most of my friends who are like, good news, my kid likes the Beatles. Parenting victory won. It's like, dude, shut up. I mean, the Beatles are great. My kids love the Beatles, and of course you should love the Beatles, but no, it's not a victory that your kids don't like new music. But then my daughter is like, I mean, she's like, watch the throne. I mean, she is so good at listening to music and talking about music that like, she's whatever, way too young. And I don't think it's good. I mean, I don't know how you do it. My brain was not formed enough when I was in my 20s to deal with being a YouTuber. Like in my 40s, I feel like I can handle it, but it's rough. I mean, it's whoever's listening to you and wants to support you should support you because it is very taxing on the brain to do YouTube. But yeah, so she loves music and finds new music and always sort of trying to share it with me and trying to get me to do reviews of stuff that I missed. And she's the only person who bought a Professor Skye t-shirt.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And she wears it to her high school, which is like the most gangster thing you can do, I think, is wearing a t-shirt with your dad's name on it.
No, that's beautiful. And that shows that they see what you're doing too.
Yeah.
Being a YouTuber is hard.
Yeah.
Whatever. But is it? Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people I talk to and even things that I deal with in real life. Like that's what's harder is like real life shit taxing this shit. Cause like I want to do this, but then like it's funny you saw I've been hitting a weed pen, but like I'm really seriously thinking of quitting marijuana because it's taking a detrimental take on my mind, my anxiety, my output of creativity, and that's something that is difficult. But It's not like I feel like becoming the head of the chair of a department is
Yeah.
being a professor is probably way more difficult than being a YouTuber, you know?
No, it is. But if YouTube were my main job, I cannot imagine the amount of stress that I would be under, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's the way that I think it's difficult is, and the way that the humanities are being treated in colleges these days. It may end up my only job. Let's just hope I get 100,000 subscribers by then. I'll start pimping out VPN or whatever the weird offers I get. To Yeah, they asked me if me and my co-hosts would like Manscaped. I'm like, I don't have co-hosts unless you mean my dog, and he doesn't have any testicles to shave, so I'm gonna have to decline your offer.
Yeah, no. I was about
Uh,
to talk shit about working with Manscaped, but that'll be for a different time. If you're a
yeah,
podcaster, don't work with Manscaped.
yeah, no, I mean they were like, oh, we'll send you free samples. I'm like, that's the deal. Like, because I've never done sponsorships. I'm not above them. I don't. It doesn't make sense to me. Like the money's like. So what I get is a razor, like, and then
You just become a spokesperson for them and you only make the money off of what the products you sell, which is
yeah,
really you're just in a pyramid scheme.
yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
I mean, hey, I still use my Manscaped razor, but I hated working with them. But
Yeah.
hey, whatever. That's beside the point. But that it is taxing because money's money. Like when this is your full time job, you got to make money, but then you also don't want to sell your soul, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, I'm a ridiculously fortunate person. And it's tricky because like I always own up to it. I always talk about it, but I do wonder how it's perceived sometimes, because I live a very good life. I've had many hard times in my life, like everyone has, but I live a very good life. And I'm often describing people who are just, who are talking about generational trauma and cycles of poverty and abuse. And it's interesting because I have to so consistent, at least I think I have to so consistently mention it, because if I don't mention the fact that, I'm happy in my house, I'm happy in my job, and I'm happy with my wife, I'm happy with my kids, that I
Why do you think you're
imagine.
fortunate?
I mean, I'm fortunate because I am, I had an upbringing where my parents didn't have to, they weren't nervous about money. So I was able to get a good education. I was able to just fuck around and do nothing for a couple of years, whatever, like working, but like just barely working. I was an assistant to the gym teacher. I was not an assistant gym teacher. I was an assistant to the gym teacher. That's what I was doing when I was your age, by the way. So like I was able to do that. And then if you're lucky enough to not to have to worry about money, then you get to do interesting things, like, I was never going to have enough money that I would never have to get a career, right? I was always going to have to work, but I was able to not worry. I was able to not have to work while I was in grad school. And so then that's how you end up doing something stupid like deciding to become a French professor when every French program in the country is in danger of shutting. And so, I got that degree and I managed to get one of the jobs, and
Yeah.
that's luck, and that's just a whole series of fortunate things. And especially when you cover rap music, I don't exclusively do rap music. Daft Punk is luckier than I am with their their upbringing, but that it all came at a cost. So I grew up fairly comfortable, partly because of Reagan's policies. And it doesn't matter how much my dad, my life was bad because of Ronald Reagan. My dad, would get stoned and drunk and scream at the TV because he hated Ronald Reagan so much, So like that was the source of my sadness. But Reagan was lining our pockets. Reagan was making sure that I would have enough money and would not have to experience what everybody who would make the music that I listen to is going through, So it's that bizarre sort of cycle. And it's interesting because when I talk about it, like very often people will just, what is this CRT bullshit? And what is this? Like, I'm not even saying what is good or bad. Like, these are just facts. Like, this is how American civilization developed. These are the systems that were put in place. And I benefited from them. And I feel it's way more offensive to like be given all of these things or the circumstances of your birth and not acknowledge them and say you're lucky. I feel that's way less offensive than sort of trying to like be edgy or be disaffected or be like, oh, this sucks, because growing up in the 90s, if you look at the culture of the late 90s, like Fight Club is a great example. There's a lot of like bitching about being middle class and white and having a good education. And yeah, I don't
That's
know.
why I never really liked Eminem. I don't like angry white guys. Like
Yeah.
I've had, like whatever. I don't need to shit on Eminem. But
Yeah.
it's like angsty white people who are angry for the wrong reasons. I wanted to I thank you for answering that question like you did, but I was wondering then, okay, so you were assistant to the gym teacher at my age.
Mhm.
Like where did your passion come from? Where did you find hard work? Where did you find dedication? Where did you find
Well, I mean, so I try to use my story whenever possible to like inspire people. Because like I'm the youngest of four. So that's part of the reason why I love music so much because I have three older brothers and each one of them was passionate about music and I would try to be cool with all of them. So one of them like rapped, one of them liked jam bands, other one really liked classic rock, and then there's some overlap. But in general, like I got into music that way. But like I was a total fuck up in high school. I mean, just like, I saved my high school senior year. I got a C minus in French and it said writing skills need work. Like my senior year of high school, I answered every single question with the word barbecue because it made all the girls and the guys in the class laugh. Like I was that much of a punk and a loser. And I didn't do any work at all. Like I read one book in high school, Frankenstein. The rest of the books I wouldn't read. I'd get Shakespeare, I'd skip the speeches and I would just go to the short bits. So it'd be like friends in Roman, skip, skip, skip. Hark, we must go. Like I did nothing. Like I would get home from school at 2:30. My friends would come over, we'd jam, we'd play Mortal Kombat 2 until 6. They'd go home, I'd eat dinner, I'd do homework for half an hour, and then I watched TV from 8 p.m. until 11 p.m. every night, just whatever it was, whatever crappy sitcom was on. So I was a complete total loser, except like I had a burning passion for music. I could tell you everything about the Rolling Stones you'd ever want to know. Once I picked up about the Wu-Tang, I had a very good knowledge of how they worked. As a little kid, I could tell you whatever. I could talk at length about which Red Sox players were doing well and which ones were doing poorly. And I had all these little passions and I was really smart about those passions. I just never connected that drive or energy to anything useful. So there was like the useful path of like, doing homework. And then there was sitting there reading liner notes and figuring out that the best Rolling Stones albums are with Mick Taylor and not Ron Wood, right? Just weird sort of things like that. So then when I got to college, all of a sudden, all that pressure to like conform and have your just be what someone else wants you to be went away. And I took a year off to make my band work. I ended up working at Blockbuster Video. I am assistant manager at Blockbuster Video years old.
not assistant to the
Uh,
manager?
no,
You
I was assistant
you
manager.
stepped up. You
They gave
stepped
me that job at 17 years old. That was how good I was. That was funny. I thought I was a dumbass. Like if you asked me, I'd say I'm stupid. Like I just thought I was stupid. But I loved video stores because I love movies. That was actually my main passion was movies in high school. And so I was like giving people recommendations and all that. And they promoted me within like a month. Like me who my first job was watering lawns in high school and I got fired because I didn't water her lawn because I didn't feel like it. Like that was how lazy I was.
up.
So yeah, so I once I got to college and I realized that like I could study things that made me interested. Once I knew I wasn't stupid, it was over. Like that was it. So I felt stupid, I felt worthless, I felt all those things just consistently. I kind of ate my feelings. I probably would have, gotten pretty into weed if I didn't have negative experiences growing up with weed, which made me hate weed and never do it. But like definitely self-medication would have probably taken place in ways other than eating a lot of like, nerds and Twizzlers. But like once I realized I wasn't stupid, then it was just done. And so I was able to do well in college, and then I was able to bum around and do nothing. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'll go to grad school. And then I was really good at grad school. And then if you just keep like doing things that you're passionate about and that people want you to do, eventually they like give you like, power. I mean the power of a full-time job, right? The power of health insurance. And then, I have this weird authority, but there's still part of me that just feels like I'm the same dumb kid sitting in my, sitting in my basement, hanging around with my friends, whatever, eating Taco Bell and like, trying to figure out which guy in NWA is yellow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
I don't know if that answers your question. I'm sorry, I talk too much, but that's a
no,
problem.
I
Problem with
trust
interviewing an interviewer.
I love this. I love this. I love hearing that. And it's very similar to how I feel. Um you're like, I was told I was lazy. I was told certain things, but it was because I didn't care about those things. But then
Yeah,
you have to dedicate your life to it. You have to
yeah,
you have to take yourself seriously.
yeah.
When did French co It's very funny. So both my parents, my mom was a French teacher, my dad lived in France for a little bit. Both spoke
Wow.
French, but they never talked to each other, even in English. So they never like taught me French. It's very funny.
uh,
Where'd you find French?
just a quick, I will answer that, but I'm also a comedy fan. I don't know if you know the joke by the great Boston comedian Dana Gould. He says his family crest is two lions facing away from each other. And what does it say? I think it says like, oh, he has some kind of line on the crest. Anyways, it's a beautiful line. Oh no, death before intimacy. That's the line underneath the crest. Anyways, Dana Gould's a very funny comedian.
Amazing.
But yeah, so French is funny because my grandfather was one of the monuments men. So if you see that movie about like saving art from the Nazis, my grandfather did that.
Oh
He was like
wow.
he was like friends with the Rothschilds because he like found their art and gave it back to them. And he was, hiding out from Nazis. And he had Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, the original transcript, like written, and like he put it in a little metal box and sat on it. So if a mine blew up, he would save his ass, literally. So he won the Legion of Honor, but he was really old and he didn't really care. So he never spoke to me in French. My mom learned French and she spoke fluently, but I didn't know until she visited me in France and spoke French better than I did. Like, she's just like, oh, I studied a little, but I don't know if it's just some kind of weird patriarchal deference or something, but I never knew. So, like, I only took French because I was forced to take 2 years in high school. And for whatever stupid reason in my head, I'm like, that it's a waste of time. I'm going to take 2 years of French. I'm going to take 4 years of French. So at least I learned something. So that's why I was such a punk at the end of my career, because I was taking it as an elective, but I was hate taking it as an elective. And then I got into college, and then you have to take 2 more years. I'm like, oh, this shit. And I tell the guy who's telling me, I'm going to take 4 years because I don't want to waste my time. And yeah, desperate for majors. Oh, really? You're really good. I am. I wasn't. You're really good. You should major. Oh, okay. The only person who ever showed interest in me intellectually. So I majored. And then, then at that point, I took classes and I read the literature and the philosophy and the food. And it's a wonderful thing to study because any language is great because you get everything. You get the music, you get the food, you get the history, like whatever parts you like, you can take. So yeah, that's how I ended up in French. Very, very randomly. It was totally in my family, but never shared with me.
That's wild. That's
Yeah,
wild. So you just kind of like hate picked it, and that's.
totally. Yeah.
Do you enjoy it now, or do you look back at it like shit? I could have done something different.
Well, that's part of why I teach it because I remember how bad my teachers were. I know how much it sucks having to learn French. It's like it's terrible. Like they're terrible. They created a terrible language. It's very difficult, but very rewarding when you get it. But yeah, there's been some kind of thing in me where I often just take the more difficult path. I don't know if it's again growing up in Massachusetts, you have to read that goddamn Robert Frost poem over and over again until it becomes part of the road less taken. But because I also majored in art history, and art history is so easy for me. Like that is exactly how my brain works. Like analyzing paintings, drawing conclusions, making connections. I that was like that. But I went into French instead, which is still tough for me. I still have to check myself. I mean, I do a fair amount of work with with like Quebecois rappers because not a lot of people are talking about them, and they're doing a lot of really great stuff up there. And one time I was talking to one of them, and he was like, "Wow, you really speak French." I'm like, "Yeah, I really do." Yeah, he was fairly surprised. Yeah, but because like that's why I like doing the music analysis so much because like that's what's easy for me. Like analysis, like if anybody, like you sort of also have to figure out like what you're good at. And I'm definitely a good teacher. That's one of my skills, and public speaking is one of my skills that most people don't have. So that's kind of a special one. But like the ability to analyze stuff, like that is for whatever reason, whether it's because I watched too much hockey as a kid and it made me think about line formations, or I don't know what, but like that's my skill. So the channel's been great because the entire time that I've had the channel, my job has been just getting worse and worse. Like less and less students. They canceled the French program at my college. Constant pressure from the administration. Losing students. Just it's so hard. And then I have this hobby where it's like I'm just going to talk to Woods and Kenny Siegel tonight. Like
Yeah.
it's way all the satisfying feelings that I would get, publishing an article or talking at a conference. Um, it's way better on YouTube. It's a much more edifying experience because you're actually reaching people, and you can do all the things you're trying to do, which is spread knowledge and humanity and all that. But also people are actually listening, not just academics. So
Yeah. Is there a day that you pick music over French?
it, well, see, it's tough because I did create a hip hop minor at my school. So even though I'm complaining about my school, which I don't do, to be clear, I do not represent the school on YouTube or in any way. I'm an individual. I'm not a part of them because I don't ever want to get fired for whatever talking about CRT. Um, but it's so I I have the worst version of the best job in the world. So that's what it is to be a French professor. So being a professor, in my opinion, is the best job you can have. I love teaching college. I love developing minds. I love my colleagues. I even love my campus. So I would probably never willingly leave my job. But if someone came to me tomorrow and said, okay, Skye, I'm going to match your salary, I'm going to match the insurance, I'm going to put the same amount into retirement, and all you have to do is release 5 videos a week instead of 3 videos a week, I'd probably do it, because
Yeah.
because if I had that assurance, but I've got 3 kids, so I can't do it without that kind of insurance.
I
Yeah,
totally understand. As I said, I'm about to hit 26 and I'm like, shit, like I've been able to do this podcast freely, but now I feel like I really do have to take it seriously and make it into a business and grow it to
right.
something special because this is what I want to do, Like I've
Yeah,
been able to find success in comedy and I've been able to get some listeners to the podcast, but that's only so much. You kind of have to take it seriously and grow it into a business to get to the next level?
yeah, yeah. And then especially if you're struggling with the same kind of whatever self-doubt that we were talking about earlier, then it's really hard because like the people who really succeed are the people who are just they're too stupid to know that they could fail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think I don't know when I watch your interviews, I often think that like if you're insecure, you mask it pretty well because you have a sort of like, of course I'm talking to West Side Gun right now. Why wouldn't I be? Whereas if I were talking to West Side Gun, even though I've talked about his music and his production I coined the term Buff Daddy, which I still think is one of the funniest things I ever came up with. Like, but I would just be why would he talk to me? Why would I be in the same room as him? No, there's just no point. I won't even ask. I won't even think about it. I won't even do it. So,
Stupidity is a big part of my success. You are very,
but
but
no, but it's not stupidity. I mean, mean, that's you showing that you have a certain skill that you're going to need to get to that next level. Because if your thing is interviewing people and you put yourself in very precarious situations where guys who look like you and have had your life experience don't usually go, like that's the
Yeah.
way you want to be, like I think about it with language. One of my better friends I met when I lived in the south of France in Marseille, and he moved to France not speaking a word of French, not a word. He was from like a Pentecostal religion. He'd never even been to a concert or a movie theater because they were houses of sin. And he went to Marseille. Mind you, I had majored in French. I got a Fulbright, whole thing, right? Or I thought I got a Fulbright. It's a confusing story. So we go there, and he just walks up to these dudes on the street, right? These like real tough first, second generation Algerian immigrant kids with like pit bulls and baseball bats, and they're just all sitting around there. And he just walks right up to them. It's like, "Ça va?" And he just starts talking to them, and they have a whole conversation. And by the end of that year, he spoke French better than I did. He never took a class. And it's not that he was stupid, it's that he was just so open and just so like, idgaff, just did not give a fuck, even though he wouldn't say the F word, that he was just completely open to that. And I often think like I try to teach that to my students because like confidence is way more important than ability when it comes to speaking a language, because you can spend all the time you want conjugating when you walk up to someone, if you can't just go, "Ça va," then you're totally lost. So yeah, so I'm not calling you stupid. I'm saying that I think you have.
No, that's not what I was being
Yes.
a dickhead. I know what you were saying. But I think that is a big point. All right. So you were like, they're making me take 2 years of French. I'll take four. Fuck them. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's like comedians. Comedians aren't really funny. If you're actually funny, you don't
Right.
need comedy. You're gonna make people laugh, you know?
Right.
The people who like see that and they're like, I want that so bad. So they try to be anxiety is the biggest pusher, but
Right.
it's a very volatile substance,
Yeah.
anxiety, because it'll push you to the greatest heights, but it'll also drag you down. And that
Yeah.
like fine balance is where art is, I think.
Yeah.
Is in anxiety. Every artist is anxious. You say I don't look nervous. I'm nervous all the time. I would consider myself one of the most anxious people I've ever met. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but it
I consider
doesn't
myself the same way. Yeah.
it's but that's why we create, because we want to prove to ourselves that it's not crippling, that we can
Yeah.
overcome the voice inside that's holding us back.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that is what happened to Kanye.
Yeah.
Like, I think we all know exactly how he thinks. Even if we don't, we know. And he got to such a great level that it was like, of course he was going to be his own downfall. Of course he was going to say things that he thought he could say because he was the greatest, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that is that volatile substance anxiety in your head. Like
Yeah.
Kanye's
Yeah.
probably hella anxious, you know?
Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like in those old movies, like when they're transporting dynamite or whatever, or nitroglycerin. It's like if you hit a pothole, the whole truck's gonna blow up. Yeah.
Exactly. How do you, we don't have to talk, but how do you feel about you? Because Jesus was so influential about to you. How do you feel about Kanye now? How do you feel like, what do you feel about what he's gone through, where his mind's at, all of that?
Well, there's like multiple things. Like anti-Semitism is bad, but the problem with anti-Semitism is Tucker Carlson getting up on the news and saying the talking points that the guy who shot up the tops in Buffalo would repeat. Like the problem with anti-Semitism is a white supremacy problem. It is not a black celebrity problem. The same thing with trans rights, and that when we jump on black celebrities to highlight other people who are being hurt by homophobia or transphobia or anti-Semitism, it's a scapegoat that is a part of white supremacy. So even though I have a hard time listening to Kanye, I don't particularly want to platform him. I do think he is legitimately unwell. I think that's why he's doing the things he's saying, things he's thinking, even the retraction 21 Jump Street wasn't that funny. It was pretty funny though.
It was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, it was.
Pretty good movie. I will fault them for that.
I'm not sure it would have cured Hitler, but if you had a time machine, what would you do? I would show 21 Jump Street to Adolf Hitler. Sorry, I'm trying to be a stand-up comedian as well. Yeah, so that's kind of how I feel. So I don't like spending time decrying what Kanye is doing because I think we need to keep our eyes on the real enemy, which is when Tucker Carlson says the great replacement is happening and that Jews are trying to replace white people with immigrants and black people, white people murder black people in Buffalo. That was the direct line that happened, where there was a far right talking point and there was also broadcast to the middle right, and then this next thing happened. And the discussion of that was 3 seconds, 2 seconds. But Kanye says whatever, Mountain Dew Code Red on the Jews tomorrow, whatever it was that he said, which is not good, and he should be castigated from polite society. He should be criticized. He should have lost his deals. Like, that's totally sensical to me. What drives me crazy is the conversation around it, because, you know, again, obviously I'm not black and I have no idea what the black experience is, the same way I don't know what women's experiences are, but all you can do is believe people when they tell you. And black people have been telling us the way the world is for my entire life. And what am I going to do? Not believe them? So when they say, like, you just look, white society is ready to pounce on anything that a black celebrity does, like that, to pounce on it and just take them down, and they will do anything they can. And it happens every single time. So I am definitely upset with it. It hurts me because also I have many Jewish friends, and you have to believe what they say. And they say when they walk into a room, they can often feel people looking at them and trying to hold back racial slurs against them. And I just have to believe them. I don't think those words, but if they say they feel them, who am I to disagree? You know? So yeah, so it's like, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I believe in systematic inequality. And the systematic inequality is alive and well. And when you scan back from that and you look at the position of evil whitey, you know, represented by me and my ancestors, this is great. This is the greatest thing ever. The richest and most influential black person, perhaps, you know, of all time, at least on one of those counts, is platforming anti-Jewish sentiments, and then they're fighting amongst each other. And then the real sort of people who benefit from the systematic inequalities, the people who look like me and my ancestors, we just get to kick back, and a couple of us get to send out a couple tweets saying we don't agree, and then we just keep all the power and all the money and let everyone else fight. So yeah, I don't usually. Yeah.
I appreciate that sentiment,
Yeah.
because it's very true, and it is something that is so easily to be like, well, that album sucked too, you know?
Right.
When really, when I ask you about it, it shouldn't be about that. It should be about what you're talking about, because that is the correct way to look at it, and that is the correct way to think about it. And yeah, I don't have any more points about that one. I appreciate what you said about that, and you've thought very thoroughly about it.
And also just people still don't understand how great of an artist he is. That doesn't excuse what he's saying, but I have spent, you know, so
You like Jesus is King?
Yes, love it. Absolutely. Absolute 10 out of 10 masterpiece, not being sarcastic. But like, I've spent most of my adult life arguing about the value of George Lucas and Kanye West. So I will defend episodes 1, 2, and 3 as vehemently as I defend Kanye West, and it's for the same reason that we have been blessed to live in a world with these artists who do what they believe is necessary, not what the market tells them to do. That they live in a world where they managed to win capitalism without trying to win capitalism, only trying to serve their artistic vision and sacrificing everything that they can possibly sacrifice to give us that vision. And in doing that, they left behind a legacy of literally everybody who's in that space either reacting or continuing what they did. So that's the other part that bothers me about the Kanye scandal, is that people, even though, when he says, I am Picasso, I am Einstein. Well, I'm not a physicist, but I am an art historian, and Kanye is 10 times more important than Picasso. And I'll go toe to toe on you. I could talk up and down about Picasso, and I love Picasso. He's great, but he's not as important as Kanye. He's not as talented as Kanye. Really, he's not. I could seriously, I would love that challenge someday. And it's another thing. It's another weird racial thing where people don't actually give him the credit. And it's partly because he takes the credit all the time, so he doesn't leave any space for anyone to say it. But it's frustrating because I have a lot of friends, a lot of boom Xers, Xer boomers, who always make fun of me for my love of Kanye, because all they know is the Taylor Swift stuff and the slavery is a choice stuff. And they're like taking these victory laps,
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but you never actually got it. You never actually got the thing. You just saw the smoke, you didn't actually see the fire. So
how does your YouTube page affect your real life?
It really makes me happier. It's just really edifying because my job has gotten so tough, and because I feel less and less listened to and less contact at sort of higher levels of thinking than I used to be able to teach. Yeah, it just brings me a lot of joy, I it changes the way I listen to music. So my family is happy, because I find music that they wouldn't know about. Like I introduce, how many other dads can introduce their daughters to Billie Eilish? You know what I mean? Like I did that. Her favorite band now is Boy Genius. I introduced Boy Genius to her. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty cool. My wife's just loves Japanese breakfast and
I
Angry
just went to
Bird.
see Japanese breakfast with my mom the other day.
Isn't she amazing?
Amazing. I've seen her twice now. Yeah.
It's like the harder she sings, the further she moves the microphone. You're like,
Yeah.
how do you sing so well?
I've also never seen someone use a gong so successfully.
Oh yes,
than her live. It's
yes.
amazing.
Because you always think of like Led Zeppelin like parting that giant gong around just for the one part in the one song, always trying to shoehorn it in.
But yeah, no, I had to say something about Japanese
Yeah,
breakfast.
yeah.
I'm
So
going
like,
actually to see Yola Tango, who I saw open up for Japanese breakfast like next week.
oh man, it must be nice living in Boston.
Oh yeah, the music's incredible. Yeah,
Because
I
the other
love
thing
it.
is,
My mom put me on to Future. Like I remember my
yeah,
mom
wow,
playing me Future before he had a Drake Future feature.
right.
Just like early, her being like, "You got to check out this guy Future," and now he's like the biggest rapper. So
Yeah,
yeah, your kids definitely appreciate you.
yeah. So that's like the good part. The bad part is that I'm constantly listening to new music. So like my family love listening to Woods, but I'm already on to ST. Is it ST or ST? Does he say ST Nack?
SD SD Neck.
ST. So like I'm already on to SD Nack. So it's like, all right, time for some, drumless screaming in a weird mishmash of
Oh,
Dominican Spanish and English. Like, get ready for that. And the
that
nice thing
album's
is
incredible. That album's
it is.
incredible,
It
incredible.
it is. And I don't know his other work. So that's one thing I wanted to compliment you on, is that, I mean, because I don't just do rap music, and I don't try to put myself as a rap channel, like I try to really emphasize the fact that I'm just kind of ignorant and just kind of like learn about new stuff, and I don't try to project expertise. But I really appreciate how deep you go, into the underground.
Oh, and it's so funny because I'm not even my bio on Instagram has never changed. This is a self-help podcast. It's never changed.
Right.
Started interviewing comedians about self-help. And then on episode 11, I thought, you know who Hologram is? Mayhem
No.
Lauren's brother.
Okay.
He has one album out, and I'm the only interview he ever did, and it was on the 11th episode, and he literally said yes as a joke. Because he's like, I
Really?
don't do interviews. This random comedian from Massachusetts wants to interview me. I'll do it as a joke because no one will ever see it. And he
Right.
debuted his DJ Muggs album on my podcast, which is
Wow.
the only album he's ever done is with DJ Muggs.
Wow.
Action Bronson's on 4 songs, Mayhem Lorenz on 3 songs, like
Wow.
incredible. And then I was like, this thing I love I can do with music too, and that's kind of where the rap thing grew. But I people see me as a rap podcast, but that is not what I consider myself as either.
Well, I mean, it's good because no offense, but we don't really need more comedy podcasts. I mean, especially no offense, but when comedians start talking about comedy, I don't know if you've ever seen the one. There's like a round table like Seinfeld, Chris Rock, and Louis C.K. And it's like they're talking about their private jets, and it's just like, oh my God, shut up. I get it. You were sad as a kid. Oh.
That's so funny to see it as an outside perspective, because I bet that's how people see us talking about music at some point.
Yeah, yeah, that could be.
But it is true. You can't really talk about comedy too much.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like the first, like the first like 10 times I heard that kind of, and I do think there's a lot of great comedy podcasts. Like I know a lot about comedy for someone who doesn't think he knows a lot about comedy,
Yeah.
but there does get a certain sort of, navel gazy sort of like, isn't what we do so brave? Isn't what we do so interesting? Which is fairly grating if you're not on the inside of that,
Oh,
because
100%. 100%. That's why interviews can get boring. Like I like conversations because that's where I don't know, that's where the real shit comes out. You don't need to talk about things that people aren't a part of. You need to talk about things that people will understand even if they're not a part of it, and that will bring them into the art more.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's
Students
one
know
of
who
the.
you are.
I have one student, so of my merch, like my merch does not sell well. So I did a Playboy Cardi shirt because when I was at the concert, I misspelled or I mistyped into my notes app. I do all my notes on notes app. Um, jump out the house as bump out the goose. So I did a drawing of bump out the goose. So I have one student who came into class one day wearing a bump out the goose t-shirt. And I was like, wow. And then he's actually requested me to review the same song for 135 days in a row. But I don't want to do it until he graduates because I don't want there to be like some kind of like conflict of interest or
No,
anything.
I feel you.
Um,
What's the
but
song?
um, something by Gang of Four. It's like, I forget what it's called. I just like day 153. Look under my videos. You'll see it.
I definitely will check that out.
But no, it's funny because most of my students are like very working class and spend a lot of time like working outside of class. So I've had students, so I teach at a public college that's a lot of first generation students, all that. So like the luxury of caring enough about music to be into someone who talks about whatever, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers for 3 hours is not really there. So it's not that they're not curious. It's that again, it goes back to that question of privilege, the sort of the privilege of curiosity. So like I've had students who are dating somebody who watch my videos. So like, wait, Professor Skye is your teacher? So that was someone who went to RIT, which is, a $80,000 a year college. I don't know how much it is, but something like that, So
Yeah.
yeah. So I think I have a lot of college age fans, but they are not at my school. So it's, like
Yeah.
I've never been recognized. I went to the Pusha T show and I sort of thought, well, if I'm ever going to be recognized anywhere, just kind of look around. No, I didn't get recognized there. Griselda canceled their show here. I have like a little theory that like they can't play in Buffalo and Rochester for some kind of like weird reasons that they've never stated. I don't know, but you'd think living in an hour from Buffalo would mean I would have seen Griselda like 10 times, not once.
Yeah. But you never get love in your hometown. I don't get booked in
Yeah.
Boston a lot.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
anyway, I really appreciate you doing this. We did like an hour 20 already, and I know
Oh,
you
cool.
allotted an hour, so I really do appreciate this. Was an amazing conversation, and I didn't even realize you were in upstate. I would love to hopefully we get to link up in person sometime because
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
I'm a big fan of what you do.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you're ever in the Rochester area, let me know and we'll hang
Oh,
out.
my spot, Ito, the rapper
Yeah.
Ito from Rochester,
Yeah.
his label Front Row Regale actually sponsors this podcast. So
Oh,
shout out
all right.
Rochester. I spend a lot of time up there. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of people out of Rochester, but they're good who are out of here. Well, some of
There's
them.
some good music out of
Yeah.
Rochester.
Yeah.
I
I
love
mean,
38 Spej,
yeah.
Ito.
Yeah. Briggs
Do you
is
know who
good.
Black G's is?
Black G or Black Jesus?
Black G's, Geez.
No, I don't.
He's someone that if you want to like his story makes his music go to another level.
Okay.
He's 38 Special's cousin, and
Okay.
he got a life in prison for murder that he did
Okay.
not commit.
Okay.
When he was 18, I think he did 20 some odd years. And while he was in prison, he got a law degree and got himself out of prison
Wow.
for murder. And,
Wow.
so when you listen to his music and you find this guy was in prison for longer than he was free, and he was there for life, and he literally
Wow.
got a law degree while in prison and got out. His music just hit so differently. So he's
Wow.
definitely a Rochester artist to look up. Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
But
Yeah.
anyway, thank you for this. Where can people find you?
Uh, Professor Skye's music review. You can also, I have a spam channel from the desk of Professor Skye. You can see my review of the Super Mario Brothers movie there.
Oh, really?
I've got like 1,000 subscribers over there. I do very sporadic videos over there. But yeah, but really Professor Skye's record review. If there's like, if an album comes out, there's a fair chance I'm going to review it. And if you, I try to bring my academic expertise and my public speaking ability to make a different kind of music review that isn't like a lot of cuts, and I don't give grades. I don't, so I try to do a different style, more like essays as opposed to reviews.
They're almost like podcast episodes about each album
Yeah.
instead of more of a review, you know?
Yeah, that's a good
It's
way to put
not
it.
to
And
put what you do onto you, you know?
no, no, I mean, because I've done I haven't done an episode in a while, but for 10 years, or 12 years, I did a Star Wars collecting podcast. But like that was before doing podcasts was relatively easy. So like I had to write all the RSS code and all that stuff.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so my computer broke, and so I now need to learn how to do podcasts the easy way. Um,
I'll teach you how. If you ever any
yeah.
questions, I can help you with that.
Yeah, but people often say like you should just do your things as podcasts, but I don't know how to monetize podcasts. I don't I can't I know how to monetize YouTube. I don't know how to monetize podcasts. So I've just but easily my show could be a podcast. That's true.
Yeah. Well, if you ever have any questions, I'm here for you.
All right, well good. And
Thank Thank you
yeah,
so much for your time. For real. Let me stop recording this. We'll end it right
yes.
there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hey, hey.